Hello, my fellow Americans, and welcome to this, the American Patriots channel. I'm Jeff Penrod, your host. There's at least one area in America that's degrading, and that's the subject of today's discussion, and that is law and order. Last year, 63 out of 66 of the largest police jurisdictions in America saw an increase in at least one area of violent crime. Also, last year, the murder rate increased 30%. We saw rioting. We saw mobs taking over buildings and even entire sections of cities. And all the while, we heard calls for defunding police. What's up with that? That sounds entirely counterproductive to me. It's time for Americans to stand up and demand a restoration of law and order in our country. Well, let's start by looking into this and finding out what is going on and why law and order is degrading. One of the main reasons for the decline of law and order is a combination of events where police appear to use excessive force, and then the media hypes the event out to the public. This causes civil unrest and sometimes rioting. It causes violence directed at police, and it results in calls to defund police. Now, when there's unrest and rioting, officers are naturally diverted from their normal duties where they're needed for law enforcement. And when there's violence directed at police and calls for defunding, police are demoralized, which causes officer performance to decrease. Ultimately, when officers are diverted from their normal duties and when their performance is decreased, this results in an increase in crime. What we saw from that schematic was that there were two initiating events: police using excessive force and media hyping the event. So if we address both of those issues, we can turn this thing around. All right, so then how do we reduce events where police are using excessive force? Well, it has to do with their training. Police need more training, and this training would not only improve their performance there, but in other areas as well. Let's take a look and see why police need more training. The Institute of Criminal Justice Training Reform did a survey of over 100 countries around the world. What they found was the U.S. had by far the lowest training requirements, with the exception of only 3 countries: Iraq, Afghanistan, and Papua New Guinea. And here you can see the results on this bar chart of many of the countries surveyed. The United States has well below 1,000 hours of training required for a person to become a police officer, whereas all the other countries had well up into, in many cases, several thousand hours required. Less training means poor performance. So we need to increase the United States requirements for training hours, and that way we can expect to see a lot better performance in many areas. What we need to do is establish national standards for police training. That way the training would be standardized and consistent from state to state and from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Those requirements would include a set number of hours of classroom training and on-the-job training, and would address many areas, including issues where currently police performance is in some cases unsatisfactory. In that effort to reform and enhance police training, they would receive additional focus on a variety of topics, one of which is de-escalation. This is critical to reduce the level of force needed and also the risk of harm to themselves and the suspects. In addition, training on appropriate use of force, to not use more than necessary, and also on proper restraining techniques. Police officers are not only responsible for their own safety, but when interacting with others, responsible for their safety as well. Also, mental health crisis intervention. This is something that officers often encounter, and it would be very beneficial for them to receive a great deal of training in that area. And then there's bias and profiling. Officers need to understand the dynamics of bias and profiling in their work duties. Communication skills, of course, where they learn how to effectively communicate with the public, as well as public relations, and certainly a great deal of experience in the training environment under a high-stress environment. That way they can learn to effectively and calmly deal with high-stress situations, which is certainly part of their duties. In addition to expanding training for police officers and setting national standards, we also need national standards for police conduct. This would include topics such as use of restraining techniques. It would bar any kind of neck holds or choke holds because those are dangerous. And it would also include guidance on use of force so that officers would know what level of force is appropriate and what level of force is not. And then finally, we need national requirements for use of dash cameras and body cameras for accountability and also for gathering of evidence. All right, so now we've covered the area of officer excessive use of force. Let's look at the other side of the coin, which is media hype. Now, everyone has a right to free speech, you and I, and also the media. However, that does not mean that we can say just anything we want. We reach the limit when we know that what we're about to say is going to harm someone. That's not legal. You cannot say something that you know will cause rioting and violence. So, for example, you can't shout fire in a crowded theater. Somebody might get trampled. We need to hold the media accountable when their reporting clearly and knowingly leads to further violence and rioting. When an event is causing rioting right now, they know the relationship there. That event is upsetting people and causing rioting. So therefore, they should not report on that event because it will fan the flames of hatred and more violence. The media must stop magnifying the perception that officers are often abusing power, because in some cases their reporting, which skews the thoughts into thinking that that was an abuse of power, is actually an appropriate use of power. So it's distorting the perception. And they need to stop then denigrating the police by implying that the police are the bad guys. The police deserve our respect. They have a tough job, and it is often dangerous too. They are putting themselves in harm's way in order to protect us. And then the media needs to stop glorifying the criminals by saying, oh, they're just a victim themselves. They're a great guy and a great family member too. The media will interview friends and family members, and they'll all say, oh, it was awful and what happened to them, and they are a wonderful person. Well, maybe they are a wonderful person, but they broke the law and they need to be held accountable. After all, there are rules, and we need to follow the rules. If we don't follow the rules, there are consequences.
Some clothes got laundry numbers on them. You remember your number and always wear the ones that has your number. Any man forgets his number, spends the night in the box. These here spoons you keep with you. Any man loses his spoon, spends the night in the box. There's no playing grab ass or fighting in the building. You got a grudge against another man, you fight him Saturday afternoon. Any man playing grab ass or fighting in the building spends the night in the box. First bell is at 5 minutes of 8. When you will get in your bunk. Last bell is at 8. Any man not in his bunk at 8 spends the night in the box. There's no smoking in the prone position in bed. To smoke, you must have both legs over the side of your bunk. Any man caught smoking in the prone position in bed spends the night in the box. You get 2 sheets every Saturday. You put the clean sheet in the top sheet in the bottom sheet you turn in the laundry boy. Any man turns in the wrong sheet spends the night in the box. Which no one will sit in the bunks with dirty pants on. Any man with dirty pants on sitting on the bunk spends the night in the box. Any man don't bring back his empty pop bottle spends the night in the box. Any man loud talking spends the night in the box. You got questions, you come to me. I'm Carr, the floor walker. I'm responsible for order in here. Any man don't keep order spends the night in the box.
Yeah, old cool hand Luke. If you break the rules, you spend a night in the box. All right, well, now that we've covered improving officer performance, let's look at how we can further reduce crime. Michael Harrison, who is the Baltimore Police Commissioner, explained it very well. Here's what he said. The factors that determine whether an individual decides to commit a crime have everything to do with the likelihood of getting caught and, if they are caught, whether there will be consequences. And there it is. In order to reduce crime, we need to make it clear that a person is likely to get caught and that there will be consequences. So how do we improve the likelihood of being caught? Studies have shown that it all has to do with officer visibility. Now this could include hiring more officers, but that's not the essential part. The essential part is that officers are at the right place and at the right time. So this could include being in higher crime areas and also at the right time of day. And beyond that, community involvement is also essential. Things such as neighborhood watches. When a criminal realizes that it's not just the police that are watching, but it's everyone, they're likely to move on and not commit any crimes in that area. All right, and then how do we make it clear that there will be consequences? Well, take an example, Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington. There were riots there that went on for days and weeks. Rioters realize that they're likely to not get caught, and even so, they're likely to be released with little or no consequences whatsoever. I really hope that the good people of Seattle and Portland will take that to heart and find themselves a different mayor next time, one that upholds law and order. But contrast that with the riot that occurred in Washington, D.C. That didn't go on for days and weeks. What's the difference? Well, those involved were sought out, arrested, convicted, and suffered the consequences of their actions. That's what it's supposed to look like. So when it comes to making sure that there are consequences, we need to be strict, but we also need to be compassionate. We need to enforce the letter of the law and make it clear that there will be consequences. And we need to use incarceration appropriately. I'd like to talk for a moment about the purpose of incarceration. Criminal detention centers must utilize vocational and life skills training, manual labor, and other re-education techniques to correct bad behaviors and better prepare inmates for success. Prison should not be just a holding facility, but instead should be a workplace to straighten out a life gone wrong. They should provide essential skills for a person to be successful when returning to society, and they should instill a strong desire to never repeat the same mistake again. And what I'm referring to there is they should utilize hard labor to make it unpleasant so that a person never wants to return to prison.
take it easy. You won't last 2 hours.
Taking it off here, boss.
Yeah, dragline, take it off there.
Taking off here, boss?
Yeah, take it off there.
That, my friends, is what hard labor looks like. It's not fun, but it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be punishment for wrongdoing. Now, to counterbalance being strict about crime, we also need to demonstrate compassion as well. We need to show leniency where appropriate, and also provide a second chance. After all, America is all about giving a person a second chance. One thing that I think we need to do as well, and this is just my opinion, and that is to abolish the death penalty. The reason is that I don't see that it's doing any good. Studies have shown that it does not reduce the rate of crime. One thing that it does do, though, is it eliminates the possibility to discover a wrongful conviction. Once a person is executed, it's too late to find out they were innocent. And sometimes that has actually happened. A person that has been sentenced to death turns out to be totally innocent. And there too, think about the electric chair. That seems to be kind of barbaric to me. It seems like a cruel way to punish someone. So I don't really think that's appropriate. One thing too is it's really expensive. It costs the state over $1 million more when a person is convicted and sentenced to death than if they were sentenced to life in prison. What I say is, let's get on board with most of the rest of the world. 73% of countries across the globe do not practice using the death penalty. Instead, let's replace it with life in prison without the possibility of parole. Well, before I move on, I have one more thing to comment about, and that is the call to defund police. I think that is an absolutely ridiculous and inappropriate way to address the policing problems in our country now. It seems like it's just a knee-jerk reaction, and let's be honest, the only people that would love to defund the police are the criminals themselves. Crime would increase if we do that. That's not the right answer. Instead, let's try to come up with a common sense, effective approach to the issues that we're dealing with today. And that approach is to fund, not defund, but fund more police training. That will give them the tools and skills that they need to do a more effective job and to avoid things such as excessive use of force or harming someone by using chokeholds. All right, so that's all I have for today on law and order. Next time I'm going to be talking about something that will benefit all of us, and that is Medicare for all. Now, I don't want to give the wrong impression, so I want to explain just a little bit. Medicare for all does not mean that everybody gets free health care insurance. Not at all. Now, that would apply to those who qualify for subsidies, but not necessarily everyone else. So what's the benefit then? Well, Medicare has been proven to be able to drive down the costs of health care. America is spending way more per person than everyone else in the world right now, even the wealthy, advanced countries like in Europe and so on. If we could drive those costs down by using Medicare to what they pay for health care coverage, then we would save for every man, woman, and child in the entire country $5,000 per year. I don't know about you, but I'd love to have an additional $5,000 in my pocket every year. So I'm sure you're going to be interested in tuning in next time right here on the American Patriots Channel. See you then.